YouTube sensation turned professional boxer Jake Paul has been celebrating his latest victory over Tyron Woodley last August and is now searching for a new opponent, preferably among the likes of Jorge Masvidal. Paul is known for rattling the cage and taunting several high-profile figures, but what does the MMA industry have to say about this ambitious fighter? Find out more in today's video. Jake Paul wants a chance to settle a score with Jorge Masvidal. The 24-year-old problem child hasn't officially decided on who his next opponent is, but Paul has expressed that he'd like to have an opportunity to settle the score with Jorge Masvidal, a former friend of his and a one-time training partner. It's not even been a full month since Paul triumphed over ex-UFC champion Tyron Woodley last August, yet he's already looking for the next challenge for what he hopes to be his 5th straight win. Before facing Woodley, the social media influencer got it on with Jorge Masvidal in a brutal back and forth, with Masvidal backing Woodley in their upcoming fight, despite lending a hand as his training partner in his earlier match with Ben Askren last April. Feeling betrayed, Paul is now fired up and wants to settle the score with Masvidal to end the grudge once and for all. In an interview with the MMA Hour, Paul specifically named Masvidal as one of his ideal future opponents. I mean, honestly, just from a personal standpoint, I would love for it to be Masvidal. Just cause of the shit talk, just because of his name, just cause he's still in his prime era, and there's a lot of personal beef there. I just took out his boy Tyron. However, Paul knows that Masvidal is still under contract, so he's hoping that the UFC president will let him out of his contract, though chances are pretty slim. Despite this, the 24-year-old boxer thinks that having the chance to fight with Masvidal will not only be the biggest one he has made yet, but also the most relevant. As much as everybody wants to see the two settle it inside the cage, it seems unlikely that UFC would sign off on allowing Masvidal to cross over to boxing, since he's still signed for promotions under UFC. The only time the UFC took part in a co-promotion of such was with Conor McGregor's match against Floyd Mayweather back in 2017. And if that's not enough reason, Jake Paul is not on particularly good terms with UFC's current big shot, Dana White. If anything, the problem child does everything in his power to continue to annoy and provoke White any chance he has. Add that to the fact that Paul called him out over fighter pay and contract issues with the fighters under his administration. Still, Paul is determined and is undeterred from the fight, should it push through. We'll see. Paul said about his expectations to actually fight Masvidal. His dad, Dana White, just has to let him. That's what it comes down to. Dana wouldn't let Georges St. Pierre fight in that Triller fight club that he was trying to do. Dana blocked him from doing that, so Dana's just blocking everyone, being greedy. I think he's starting to realize I'm embarrassing a lot of his UFC fighters. It's a bad look for him, but there is money to be made, so we'll see what ends up happening for sure. Although Paul has named Masvidal as the next ideal opponent, the former Disney star also openly expressed that he's open to embracing any challenge thrown his way. He also added that he wants the opportunity to take on an adversary with prior boxing skills to prove that he's ready to level up in competition. Like many others, he's just as ambitious, and the possibility of high-profile bouts against the best MMA fighters excite him. Paul finds it hilarious that the majority of MMA fighters are thinking he's scared and that he's running away when he brags that he already fought for 2 consecutive years back-to-back and with well-known MMA fighters. He even called them out that they're not doing big fights enough and that they cannot box. He continues to taunt the general MMA populace, saying he'll take all of them down, and even points out that he outboxed 5 former UFC champions. Victor Belfort didn't even get close to winning that many championships, Paul reasoned out. If you think he isn't done yet, he's not, and he's got a lot more to say. The internet sensation once again stressed that they cannot box for shit, stating once again that they're scared, since he took up one of the best fighters who are inducted in the Hall of Fame, which he beat up on a bad night on a hyper-extended elbow. Derek Brunson responds to Jake Paul's comment. Whilst the YouTube sensation's taunt toward Masvidal continue to fall on deaf ears, Paul now turns his attention to another boxer, Derek Brunson. Paul retweeted an article by MMAfighting.com with the headline that read, "Derek Brunson willing to take a tune-up fight against Jake Paul. Otherwise, he'll wait for Adesanya versus Whitaker winner." To this, Paul wrote as a caption in his retweet, "Dana White admitted this morning that I would destroy 170-pound Jorge Masvidal," Paul said via MMAmania.com. So Dana, will you give Derek Brunson permission to make some real money? Dana? It didn't take long for Brunson to clap back at Paul's invitation, to which the boxer tweeted an edited picture of him and Paul with the caption, "When Hannah Montana's boyfriend meets blonde Brunson. This ain't Disney, I'd cook you." As much as Bronson wants to take part in this fiasco, we highly doubt we'll see these two settle it inside the ring nor the cage, since Dana White shut the idea down and even called Paul's taunting tactics old. White is done with his antics, which he relayed in an interview earlier in August, saying Paul's using the media to hype him up and get him to fight somebody, to which White thinks that the press is fed up too. He also called out how Paul's previous opponents are athletes who haven't won a single match in years and are beyond their golden years, whereas Paul is just starting his. Dana White also said that for the media to take him seriously, the 24-year-old boxer should fight someone of his build and class. UFC president wants to pit Jake Paul against Anderson Silva. Two of Dana White's previous fighters went down in a fight against Paul, namely Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley, and the problem child has been making noises about wanting to fight Jorge Masvidal. Dana White shot down the idea, but the UFC had a certain person in mind to fight with him, someone closer to his size, like UFC legend Anderson Silva. Following his departure from the UFC in 2020, Silva took a chance and pursued a career in professional boxing. His latest accomplishment brags of defeating Tito Ortiz in a single round earlier this month. In an interview with the Australian Daily Telegraph, White pointed out that Masvidal is 170 pounds and stated that Paul should fight someone of his size since Paul weighs 190 pounds. He did name Anderson Silva as an ideal opponent for Paul, since not only Silva weighs in the same class as Paul, he's also under contract, has the same build, and he's also in the same age group Paul loves to fight. White also backed Silva, saying that the 46-year-old veteran is actually winning fights, and that he has prior boxing experience and won some fights. He calls out Paul, who keeps egging 170 pounds Masvidal when Silva is a better opponent for him, which he thinks is a no-brainer. In addition to that, White also reasoned that Woodley has been on a losing streak for years. The UFC president also listed down some of the reasons why Tyron Woodley lost to Jake Paul. For one, Paul is much younger than Woodley, who is in his 40s, already beyond his golden years. Not only that, Woodley hasn't won any matches in 3 years, and he hasn't even knocked somebody out in the same weight class for the past 5 years. White says that those types of boxers are the ones Paul wants to fight, which he even barely won. He thinks that Paul is getting too cocky, picking a fight with Masvidal, who's ranked in the top 10 and weighs much less than Paul. He insists on pushing a match between Paul and Silva, who's not in contract with the UFC and has won 2 boxing matches recently. But this time, Dana is the one who taunts Paul, claiming the YouTuber doesn't want to see it happen. To this, Paul hasn't responded yet, since he's too focused on securing a fight against Tommy Fury, the younger brother of WBC heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. British pro boxer Tommy Fury admitted that he turned down 2 offers from Paul to face him inside the boxing ring, saying the offers weren't even worth addressing. Paul has been going around claiming that the Brit has been avoiding his invitations, to which Fury revealed in an Instagram post why he did so. He admitted that offers have been made to him by Paul, but he thinks that said offers weren't worth addressing, with Paul offering him 1 million euros for the fight. Fury stated that Paul's offer is not even worth considering to begin with, since a match of this magnitude between the two of them is worth a lot more. So far, we haven't heard from Paul's camp yet, so we'll be wrapping up today's video. Thanks for watching today's video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you at the next episode.